This week, the police chief talks about the focus, the challenges, and the progress the department has made toward the city's public safety. The city council has what it needs to completely rebuild Cascade Park for the price of just about $1 million, and on Wednesday, the council gets to vote on whether or not to accept it. Hello neighbors, I'm Marcus Serta, former Essex Junction City Councilor, and welcome to the Essex Junction Packet Podcast. This podcast is not produced by or affiliated with the City of Essex Junction or the City Council. My goal is simply to help make local government a little easier to understand by breaking down the City Council packet before each meeting. But first, let's take a quick look back at what happened in the last meeting. At the July 22nd meeting, the council actually finished setting this year's municipal tax rate, about 60 cents per $100 of assessed value, which is about a 40% decrease from last year. Now, if that sounds dramatic, here's the why. By Vermont statute, the city can't collect more in total taxes just because home values went up. The budget gets divided across the new larger grand list. So when property values jump the way they did this year, the rate is expected to come down. What that means for you personally is a little different. Your own bill can still go up or down depending on how your property's new value compares to the average across the grand list and a few other assessment factors. Here's a catch. The grand list still isn't finalized. The assessor's office got about 400 grievance requests to work through. And so at a special meeting on July 28th, the council approved a 60-day extension to finish the process. So the rate is set, but the final bill could still shift a little once that list is finally locked in. The council also gave the green light to move forward on the West Street Force Main project. That's the pipe carrying wastewater from the Waste Street pump station to the treatment plant. It's undersized for future growth, so it needs to be replaced, and at a cost of about $2 million. And because that's a bit too big for the sewer fund to cover itself, it needs to bond in a vote this November. And ratepayers should expect a modest increase on their water and sewer bill once or if that particular vote is approved. Now, let's get into this week's agenda. First up, Chief Ron Hogue is going to be giving the council his regular department update, and this is a chance for him to talk shop outside the budget season. A few things worth knowing. EPD is now staffed at 25 of 31 authorized officer positions, after hiring 5 and losing 3 to retirement and resignation. Regardless, they've stood up a crime reduction team, and according to the chief's report, officers have caught at least 2 people who were breaking into vehicles at night, and the department says it has seen a reduction in that type of activity. They've also upgraded body cameras, in-car cameras, and tasers this spring. Traffic remains their biggest ongoing issue, and the department has increased enforcement, worked with city staff on the new traffic calming policy, and of course assigned an officer specifically to traffic. Looking ahead, police say that they do intend to continue addressing traffic through enforcement and education while working with the city's planning department and public works. This is a good example of where municipal issues start to overlap. When residents complain about speeding and unsafe streets, the answer isn't necessarily just writing more tickets. Police can handle enforcement. Public works can change physical infrastructure. Planning can look at street design and traffic patterns, and the council can establish policies and ultimately decide where resources go. So when the chief describes traffic as the department's greatest issue, one thing worth listening for on Wednesday is whether the conversation focuses primarily on enforcement or whether councilors start to also talk about broader street design and the traffic calming side of the problem. Another concern the chief will discuss this week is impounding animals. The Chittenden County Humane Society, which the department has contracted with to house impounded animals, has said it will no longer take dogs that are picked up as strays rather than surrendered by their owners. That leaves the EPD and honestly most police departments in the county without a clear place to house those dogs. The issue has not been solved yet, but it is on the radar and it is being worked through. Also, there has been a significant change to restorative justice. The Essex Community Justice Center closed on June 30th. Its restorative justice responsibilities now transferred to the new Chittenden County Community Justice Center, formerly the Burlington Community Justice Center. According to the police memo, this came from a collaborative effort to consolidate the county's 4 community justice centers following changes that the legislature made on their funding. The department says its community outreach team continues to work with police and the community, although additional funding changes are being discussed with Howard Mental Health. The city, in previous meetings, has discussed providing space for restorative justice in City Hall so that representation can be more accessible. That's another area worth watching because the packet tells us that changes are being discussed, but it doesn't tell us what the final funding arrangement will be. Also, on the police front, the council will be interviewing an applicant for the last open seat on the Police Community Advisory Board and hear a brief update from the board itself before deciding on that appointment in an executive session later on in the meeting. Also on the agenda this week, staff will walk through the council on what has passed in Montpelier this year and what is affecting Essex Junction. Here's a few highlights. There's a new housing law, Act 179, that gives municipalities more tools to fund infrastructure for housing projects and continues to push for zoning reforms around things like accessory dwelling units. There's also Act 166, which is the one that you might want to know if you actually want some backyard chickens. It says towns can't keep you from having at least 12 chickens for personal use or sale, and they can't charge you a fee for it. On the finance side, Act 170 begins a long-term shift toward regional property assessment districts, though that won't fully kick in for a few years. And Act 162 shifts more fire permit authority, like burn permits, to local fire chiefs. Now let's talk about another top story this week, and especially for you pickleball fanatics. Cascade Park. It's a 10-acre city park that's overdue for a major rebuild. The courts are failing, and this week the council is set to vote on formally accepting about $496,000 from a federal land and water conservation fund grant, which the city matches dollar for a total project of just about under $1 million. Now, what are you going to get for that? Well, it pays for 9 pickleball courts, 2 tennis courts, a basketball court, all lighted, which no other city facility has, and a new multi-purpose field where the old courts are now. You're also going to get a new playground, a new swing set, and an actual bathroom facility. This is all on the consent agenda. Now that's because the project has been already reviewed and discussed in prior meetings, so it's being bundled with some other routine items so that it can all pass in just one vote. It's a big one, especially for anyone who uses the park. Also on the consent agenda, there is a burn permit for the Essex High School's homecoming bonfire. This is a good example, actually, of that new fire chief authority we talked about from Act 162. As always, there's a reading file this week, too. And this is that background material the council receives but doesn't vote on. It includes the July financial report, minutes from the Development Review Board, Regional Board minutes memo, a check warrant, tree farm management minutes, and the city's tree advisory committee minutes. Nothing urgent here, but it is public, so if you want to dig in, it's available. That's this week's agenda. If you're concerned about public safety or Cascade Park is the park you use, this is the meeting where those conversations move forward. So remember, the meeting is Wednesday, August 12th at 6:30 p.m. at 2 Lincoln. You are welcome to be there in person. You can join in on Zoom, or you can catch it through Town Meeting TV, including their own YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you before the next meeting.